Hey guys, welcome into the Bear With Us podcast. I'm Jack, aka Guy on the right, still, and that's Frank, aka Guy on the left. This appreciate you guys hanging out with us for a little bit. Going to be talking. So Frank, full disclosure, right? Last episode we ended it with, oh yeah, we might do our QB rankings for the NFC. We'll get to that. And then you and I completely forgot that the schedule would be released. So we decided let's push the quarterback conversation a little bit farther, and we will go ahead and talk a little schedule. But before we get to that, Frankie, how are we feeling so far?
Feeling good, man. The weather seems like it's starting to turn for the better, which is great, even though this past weekend was atrocious.
Yeah.
It was Mother's Day though. Fuck the mothers, right? Like why should they get good weather?
Listen, there's a whole sect of our comment section that you just tapped into. All right. And they're
Good.
like, yeah, absolutely.
We just need to. Oh, I thought you were saying on the flip end. I thought you were saying we have a large female demographic that was going to come for me.
No.
That's how we're going to
I
get
don't think
big, Jack. We need to get canceled.
Listen, that's how we get canceled, and then we go on our podcast about how we got canceled.
No, yeah, exactly. We go to Joe Rogan's comedy.
Yeah, the Joe Rogan. That's how he's worked his magic. But Frankie, we do want to talk a little bit about the schedule. We got some dates, we got some teams, and I think it would. I don't know if I want to do like an overall record guess quite yet. I think it's just natural. That's kind of naturally how the conversation will go, because it's hard not to look ahead. But I mean, we did this last year, and I can't remember exactly how we thought the schedule would go. I don't think you or I, either of us, thought it would be a 3-win season.
I think we picked 6. No?
Yeah,
7, 6,
8, somewhere in that range feels about right. And they were to be fair, they were kind of on their way until some of the injuries set in and things like that. But teams people love looking ahead to what teams are who's playing who when. Frank and I already have a problem with this schedule, which we've talked about numerous times. We'll obviously talk about it again here. And then I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Bears have 4 primetime games.
That is correct. 4.
They have a Thursday night. They have a Thursday night game against the Commanders. It's just like, okay, well, let's start at the beginning, and we'll go through it from there. Should we start with the preseason?
No, preseason. Well, no. We'll probably repeat this later on in the off season and like even during the preseason. Did we just quickly talk about what our expectations are? Because for me, really the only thing for me is the starters getting reps. That doesn't mean like full quarters, full halves, but I do think that's the one thing that I learned from Nagy, and this is complete hindsight. I wasn't bashing Nagy then. I really didn't mind, but because we went through that regime, I do truly think that preseason snaps are valuable. I think just getting that live action, getting that adrenaline going through the, even the motions of things against a defense that's not your own, coming off of camp and everything. I think there's value in that, Jack. Like I know there's a risk of injury and everything, but I think the value of, 3 or 4 drives a game, even for Justin Fields and some of the starters on offense, at least week 1, potentially even week 2. Week 3, I don't care about. But yeah, that's where I stand. Do you feel any differently? Or are you still on the Matt Nagy train?
It's such a difficult conversation, in my opinion, only because because I do agree with you. I think there is some value in getting some reps in the preseason, but you do also you want to avoid the unnecessary injuries or injuries as much as you possibly can until, they may pop up a little bit. During the regular season, injuries are never good regardless, but you ideally would prefer them to happen in games that actually matter. So it's always a little bit tough. I think the way that they handled it, Matt Eberflus, I think the way that he handled it last year, I thought was really good though. So I would imagine they'll kind of continue. They don't seem like the type of team to really just sit out certain things. Now, granted, that does not mean that Ryan Poles will be like, just have him out there, have Justin Fields out there all game or anything like that. I think they'll be smart about it because that is one of the things that we did learn about this coaching staff and this front office is they do tend to lean towards more of the smart way on how to handle things. So I at this point, I would say I trust them to make the correct decisions.
Agreed. No, I totally agree. I also selfishly just want to see a couple of reps. You know, DJ Moore, get him in there. See if Velus can actually catch the ball. You know, small things.
So one thing I did see that was interesting, Frank, and is that the Bears and the Colts will actually be holding joint practices, and that's not ultimately surprising given the kind of the history between those two teams. But they do play each other in one of the preseason games. They're going to Indianapolis in that Week 2 game. But I just, again, it's interesting that a deal never materialized between those two franchises for that number 1 overall pick. Ultimately, I really do think the Colts got the guy that they really wanted to get, given how Jim Irsay sort of talked about Anthony Richardson after that. And it's just interesting that those two teams seem to kind of be interconnected at this point, especially now, of course, in a time where I've abandoned them and just don't give two shits about that organization. So
yeah, well, I mean, the interesting thing about it is, by all accounts, and and until we know, or until we hear different reports or confirmation from either party, what it sounded like is, based on the knowledge that some beat writers have, I think for both teams, is they chose to keep Michael Pittman and roll with whatever quarterback was going to be there, which wound up being Anthony Richardson over Bryce Young. So, we'll see if that was the right decision, but I think that would have gotten it done. A very similar deal, probably a less, like, you knock 1 second off because you're not dropping all the way to 9, but right. Very similar deal honest, with a veteran.
I'd probably prefer DJ Moore to
I do too.
Michael Pittman. I just think the profile fits a little bit better with DJ Moore and this team than maybe Pittman. And that being said, I really like Michael Pittman though.
I do too. No, I agree with you. I think in terms of variety and building a wide receiver room, I think Moore is the better fit here. I don't know if he's the better receiver. There's more to come there. Michael Pittman's had a couple really good years, but it's just that was some of the leverage that was created though. Is if you don't do this deal with me right now with DJ Moore involved, or Brian Burns, he was another name as well. I know they were sort of picking between a couple of different players, but I can take a lesser deal from the Colts. Who knows if Pittman was the actual kicker? Maybe it was an additional first, or who? We're not in those negotiations, right. But again, that just sort of goes to what I think was a masterclass by Ryan Poles in selling that first overall pick.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And on the Colts end, I think it's really smart. I think that's a good team to want to have joint practices with, specifically for your future franchise quarterback. Just in the way that they play the game is obviously pretty similar. And I think Anthony Richardson could learn a lot from Justin Fields in terms of how he's handled himself so far in the first couple years he's been in the NFL. So I think it's smart all the way around. I like that teams kind of get together for that type of stuff. And again, I think it just makes sense given the history of those two teams. But Frankie, let's go into the schedule proper, the regular season schedule, all 18 weeks of it. And we'll go ahead and get started with week 1. Bears hosting the Green Bay Packers. It's a 3:25 start. I'm gonna share my thoughts real quick, Frank, and then I'll let you kind of weigh in as well. Out of anything, I think it bothers me the most that it's a 3:25 start. like either make it Sunday Night Football or just make it a noon game, right? Like, I just, what is the draw here? Bears Packers? Like, there's no Aaron Rodgers. It's Jordan Love. Like, I just don't necessarily see the story outside of Bears Packers. I don't know why they're more of like a prime time-ish type of game.
Yeah, I just, you already know my angle, Jack, and people who've been with us for a few years. It doesn't matter if it's Green Bay or not. This could have been Detroit. This could have been Minnesota. I don't like division games in the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season, because again, like you look at the way most teams are, offensive lines take a couple weeks to gel, and you got new quarterbacks potentially. The Packers do. The Bears have some new weapons. Like, you're not gelled as a team just yet. And it's never to make excuses, because if the Bears win, we're going to be happy. Just, it doesn't matter what, win is a win, no matter who it's against. But These games are so important, man. You play these teams twice a year. I want both teams, and this isn't coming from just a Bears perspective. Like I would rather play the Packers when they're at their best, the Vikings when they're at their best. I guess the counter argument to it is like, by week 8 there may be injuries, but to me that like there's injuries, all throughout a year. Like they can get hurt in the preseason. That's what I'm saying. So that's the only argument that I've heard that made any inkling of sense. But it's just like especially they have a brand new quarterback. I know he's been there for a few years, but he hasn't had that many live reps. So you have a guy that's going to be thrown in there against. I don't know. It feels gross to me. I don't like it.
Well, and so like if the Bears do end up winning that game, which we can get to our picks here in a second in terms of whether we think it's going to be a winnable game, if they're going to lose, whatever it may be. I just like that's not really a win that I would feel super. I mean, I would love for the Bears to beat the Packers. Don't get me wrong. Anytime, day of the week, but it's just like that's not something that you can really like. Like Bears fans can't talk to Packers fans and be like, oh yeah, we whooped your ass, and they because then they could easily say like, oh, it's Jordan Love's first start as like the official quarterback. There's still things that are getting worked out, and the Packers could look much better week 5, week 6, and that win doesn't carry as much weight. Like that's kind of how I view that. And then again, sorry to like jump all the way ahead, but to play the Packers week 1 and then not again until week 18.
That's the other thing.
Feels very weird to me.
It does.
That feels very, and neither game is Sunday night. I mean, that one's to be determined. But I would be very surprised if the week 18 game in Green Bay becomes like a Sunday night game.
I would, if the winner is going to make the playoffs, if this is a win and in situation, it's going to be.
Oh, sure.
Sunday night for sure. Bears Packers, they're going to eat that up.
But I don't see that being a scenario.
I mean, maybe. But,
Frank, do you think the Bears are going to win this game?
Listen, I was going through the schedule. I didn't really put win-loss on any of them. To me, this is a winnable game. This isn't one that I'm going to be surprised if the Bears win. But again, things change by then. An injury may happen in the preseason or at OTAs for either team, and I feel more confident either way. But on paper, I'm not petrified of the Packers right now. I think they're both comparable teams. I think the Bears have a better quarterback as it stands. Jordan Love has a chance to prove that he's, better than a lot of people. I mean, he may be a fucking top 5 NFC quarterback for all we know. There's only 3 good quarterbacks in the whole conference. But it's a winnable game for me.
I like that framing of it, a winnable game, because you're right. I mean, strange things happen. There could be a giant rainstorm that happens like last year, and everybody, including us, picked the 49ers to come in and beat the Bears. No,
we picked the Bears.
We both picked the Bears.
We did. We both picked the Bears. Yeah,
that's right.
Not for the rainstorm. We didn't even know there was going to be one.
No, we had no clue. But that's just because we were confident. But no, I don't think Frank and maybe I shouldn't speak for you, Frank, but I know for me, I think it's still a little too early for us to do are the Bears a playoff team? Are they not a playoff team type thing? We'll definitely get to that a little bit towards the beginning of preseason. But yeah, I agree. I think this is a very winnable game. Honestly, Frank, the schedule makers did the Bears kind of a favor in terms of just how this schedule played out. There are a lot of winnable games. I feel like you can kind of squint your eyes and see the Bears kind of winning. I mean, it would be quite the kickoff to the true Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus regime if they start their second year of the rebuild with a win over the Packers at home.
I agree. No, the game definitely means something, but that's sort of why I sort of lean with you. That's what makes it week 1 feel
There's like 7. I was taking a look. There's like 7 divisional games outside of the Bears Packers.
It's stupid. Like I just don't. Yeah, I don't. They're too important. You play these teams twice a year. They're important games. I hope both teams are healthy in week 18, and then you get to really, if one or both are playing for a wild card spot, that'd be phenomenal. But week 1, it's hard to have any grand takeaways, right? Teams are gelling, offensive lines are gelling, new players, potentially new coaches. I mean, it's just so much going on. But a win would be a win. I'm not going to act like I wouldn't be happy about it. Doesn't matter who they were playing week 1, but just the fact that it's a division game. But yeah, winnable game for sure.
And then the Bears go on the road for 2 straight weeks. They go to Tampa Bay. That's a noon game, which I'm very happy about. That'll be a fun one, I think. And then I'll just spoil it because I'm going to tell you the third week is not going to be a winnable game. That's in Kansas City, 3:25 game. Again, the Bears you can't call it prime time, but it is a more important time. Like teams will be focused on Bears and Chiefs, which I think is kind of cool. That being said, they're probably going to get their asses kicked by Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. But let's talk about the Tampa Bay game first. Tampa Bay, they got Baker Mayfield battling it out with Kyle Trask. They've got some pretty good offensive weapons that you and I, for the offseason starter, we're talking about maybe Mike Evans, maybe Chris Godwin, maybe looking there. They've got some interesting pieces on that defense. Like, is this a winnable game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
I think so, yeah. It's, again, I think we probably should have just started with saying, like, the NFC, in our eyes as it stands, is a very weak conference.
Yeah.
You know, we're saying winnable games, and if they win every game that we look at right now and think is winnable, they may come away with 9, 10, 11 wins. And that doesn't mean they're an elite team. I think that's more of a reflection of the conference, because if they were in the AFC and they were playing primarily AFC teams and, pick a division, I wouldn't be as confident in saying that, this game is winnable. Granted, the division that they're playing from, the AFC, is also kind of weak too. So I'm not scared of them either. But yeah, it's one of those things where this is why I think I'm happy that Poles is relying more on the draft and building that way, because I don't think he's ever going to jump out of body and be like, we're one piece away. Here's the chance to throw,
right.
3 firsts for this version, this era's Khalil Mack. Like, right. It's just, I don't think he's going to do that. So that does make me happy, because there is a world, and this is getting way ahead, that maybe they win 10, 11 games. Other teams retool in the NFC and it's a stronger conference, and all of a sudden the Bears are more of a 7, 8 win team. You know what I mean? Like, so there's always that possibility. But yeah, I mean, again, another winnable game. I think you can break some of these down, especially this early, to quarterback. Right now, I trust Justin Fields more than I trust Jordan Love, and I trust him more than I trust Baker Mayfield. It is what it is. I like, Tampa defensive head coach. They weren't a great defense last year, but they certainly weren't a bad one. But again, what is really an elite defense? And by today's, by today's standard, we saw Justin Fields do what he did to the Eagles, and that was an elite defense. It was one of the top 5 defenses in the league. Like, they still give up a lot of yards, these elite defenses today. So it's hard to say, like, on paper, I'm terrified of a defense. But yeah, winnable game for me. Doesn't mean they're going to win it, but it's winnable.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this should be a win for them. I'm not even going to say winnable. This should be a win for them. Just with the talent that the Bears should have on offense, I think overall, like you said, the quarterback position is huge for me, and I just don't trust Baker Mayfield. And this will be a really good test, I think, for the Bears defense. I think this will be their first big test, because you'll have, Jalen Johnson matching up with Jalen Johnson matching up with Mike Evans. You'll have Kyler Gordon inside, maybe guarding like Chris Godwin, or Justin Gage. Like, there's going to be Russell Gage. Justin Gage is a former Tennessee Titans wide receiver from a very long time
I didn't even blink because I knew the name was familiar.
Yeah. Russell Gage is the one I'm thinking of. But the Tampa Bay has a pretty solid offensive unit, and I think this could be a really good test for the Bears defense. I just don't. Todd Bowles he don't do anything. He just doesn't do it for me at all.
I agree. I think both weeks though, Jack, where we thought the defensive line did improve was the run defense. That's going to be a huge test. I think both of these teams are going to be run first teams.
White,
AJ Dillon. Yeah. I don't know who Tampa's second running back is right now, but I'm very high on Rachaad White. I liked him as a rookie. I liked his landing spot. I liked what I saw from him in games last year.
They do too, because they didn't draft a running back.
Yep.
I don't think
he is safe. Oh, Chase Edmonds is. That's a nice little 1-2 punch. Rachaad White, Chase Edmonds.
What happened to Chase Edmonds, man? He had a nice little season. Went to Miami, got cut. Went to Denver.
He went to a system where running backs die. They have 7 running backs every single year in that type of offense. So I expect him to bounce back. Or at least as a third down pass catching back. He's very good at that. But yeah, that's going to be a huge test for the defensive line and the linebackers to see if they can do a little something to the run.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Bears have had some success playing in Tampa. And Frank, you made a point that I wanted to touch on real quick in regards to the schedule, not looking as difficult. Maybe 10, 11 wins could potentially be possible. I mean, people wonder why the parity in the NFL is so great. I think a lot of it has to do with how they schedule, the fourth place teams play the fourth place schedule. So they're playing other teams that finished last in their division as well, and maybe are in also a rebuild, or maybe just lost one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, if not the greatest, depending on how you feel about Tom Brady. There's a lot of change there, right? So the Bears are playing an easier, want to make this clear, easier schedule. Things change all the time. It looks easy on paper. Who knows how teams have improved? Who knows how things might gel a little bit? That being said, looking at week 3, I mean, there's just I would be shocked if the Bears went into Kansas City and walked away with a win. Frank, I'll tell you what, if Justin Fields is somehow able to pull off that win in Kansas City, I think that establishes him in the MVP race.
Yeah.
And I talked about it last year. I thought he should have been in the MVP race a little bit more. We had a little bit of conversation about that. He did finish, I think, like 9th or something like that in MVP voting. So is what it is. But that could be a real statement game. If they have 2 wins and they're going into Kansas City and they somehow walk away from it with a W, going to be looking at this team a lot different.
Yeah, I mean, it also depends on how they would pull it off. Like, if the defense just comes into their own and all of a sudden there's actually a pass rush and they win it that way, I don't know how.
How you're gonna keep up with Patrick Mahomes?
Well, no, not even that. I just mean like how if it's for some crazy reason like a 17-13 Bears win, that wouldn't make me feel as happy as if it was a shootout win and Justin put the team on his back. But this is the way. We're not there yet, obviously. So if the Bears steamroll Green Bay and Tampa, we may feel a little bit different, a little hot in the pants going in there. But as it stands, that to me is a measuring stick game. This is not a winnable game right now. This to me is, we talked about.
How far are you?
How far away are you from the elite of the elite? 100%. And that goes from an individual level, from comparing Justin Fields to Patrick Mahomes. Granted, they're playing different defenses, so that is what it is. But at the end of the day, there is that pressure on Justin to keep up with Pat, right? So there's that aspect to it. But then we talked about from the defensive standpoint, how good is the secondary really? Kansas City ain't there to run the ball, baby. They got 5 runs and that's it. Patty's throwing the ball 60 times. How good is the secondary really? This is their measuring stick game too. So it's going to be exciting. I can see anything from a double-digit Kansas City win to sort of what happened last year where, the Bears stay close in a lot of these games and they lose by 1 score, or they just, a team starts pulling away late in the 4th. That seems to, probably be where I lean right now. But yeah, that's not a winnable game for me as it stands.
I think, like you said, it would be an absolute statement game for Justin Fields. And I do wonder how many, let's just say in a world where the Bears do win this game, do Bears fans finally shut the fuck up about not drafting Patrick Mahomes?
I hope that narrative dies, though. It's not like Mitch is still here. If Mitch was still here, I would understand. Like, it's over with. We've turned the page. Like, this is a new chapter.
That's not how we operate. That's not how us Bears fans operate. You know that, Frank.
That's true. That is true.
Week 4, the start of October, Sunday, October 1st, at home against the Denver Broncos, a noon game. Like to see that on CBS, which is weird. I feel like the Bears don't usually play on CBS. I feel like they're usually a Fox team.
Jackie, but have you noticed though? That to me seems it's starting to be like a thing of the past. They gave a game to Peacock. They have like a divisional round game now. I mean, the NFL is just saying, like, to be honest with you, this is what it feels like. I'm positive there's an actual strategy to it, but it's like, let's just see how much better we are than other leagues in this country. Let's give a team to, they're on Amazon Prime still doing crazy numbers. They obviously have had Fox, NBC, and ABC, CBS in a chokehold. Yeah. I mean, what the fuck? They're going to put shit on like Telemundo at this point and just see what their numbers could be. Like, it just seems like they're flaunting at this point is what they're doing. No,
I don't disagree. I know the Bears are, I think the first 3 games are on Fox, the first 3 games of the season. So I do like that. CBS just, I don't know why. I don't know why.
I don't like their presentation. It's like, it's more dull, isn't it?
Agreed. Agreed. And they have Romo, so we all know how Frank feels about Romo. I hope we get Greg Olsen in some of these games.
I would love Greg Olsen, yeah.
Well, wait, is he Sunday night now? No. No. Never mind. He's not even NBC. What am I talking about? Frank, let's talk about the Broncos a little bit, because I think this is a really interesting game because it's kind of like two fated teams kind of colliding a little bit. Obviously, the conversations with the Bears potentially getting Russell Wilson, the Broncos actually went out and made it happen. And now it's Justin Fields against Russell Wilson. I think it's an interesting matchup. I do think that this is going to be a winnable game. However, this might be one of those games that's like, maybe like you were just saying, 17-14. Like this might be an ugly game, an ugly affair.
It could be, yeah. I'm more intrigued this game because at this point you would think Denver has their footing under them and they're starting to show you who they really are under Sean Payton. And was last year a fluke for Russ, or were we right about him this whole time that he was a bum? That's what I'm more intrigued about in that game. And, they've always been a very good defensive team. I feel like, the same way that the national sort of view of the Bears is like defense first. And that's just sort of what I think about the Broncos as well. They always seem to have a really good defense, or at least like a top 10, top 15. So this might be the real first test for the Bears offense, in that type of game that you're talking about. Like they're going to be tested against Kansas City in a different way. Can you win a shootout? Kansas City's going to score points. Can Justin Fields and DJ Moore and Cole Kmet and everybody, can they score some points? This one might be, can you sustain drives? Can you get the crucial third downs against a solid defense? Because I think this, to this point, would probably be the best defense that they had played, at least on paper right now. Again, winnable, but I as it stands right now, trust Justin Fields more than I trust Russell Wilson. Sean McVay is Sean McVay, though, man. Like, what we talked about Sean Payton. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sean Payton is Sean Payton. And
Sean McVay is also Sean McVay.
McVay is also Sean McVay. You're correct.
Sean McVay is not Sean Payton.
Have they ever been in the same room at the same time?
That's a good point. I don't know.
Well, they were all in that picture of all the head coaches, so I suppose they were. But the you have to, as it stands right now, give him the coaching edge, like pretty severely.
Yeah.
No, like what I'm saying is, if we favor Justin Fields over Russell Wilson, even with having a really bad year last year with Russell Wilson, it's probably not too much, just given Russell Wilson's track record, right? Like, he's had a whole career. We can just potentially chalk that up, the last season, up to changes and yada yada. There's no world in which I'm favoring even remotely close Matt Eberflus right now, or ROC Luke Getsy over Sean Payton. There just is like that may even the balance, or even like tip it over to them. Yeah.
It's a great point. And I think that's something that might get a little bit lost when it comes to what Bears fans are really expecting when looking at this schedule. It's not just Justin Fields. It's not just the offense. It's Matt Eberflus. How can he control a game as the head coach? Yep. And that's, again, a lot of questions that I've had for they have been thrown out there throughout the offseason and even during the season while it was going on. A lot of questions need to be answered by Matt Eberflus this year, but I think this is a good schedule, a good 4 games to really kind of show what he's got, because it's not super easy, right? It's not just the Texans. It's not just the Panthers. I know I'm going to get shit for that, but oh well. That's how I feel. It's not the bottom feeder teams. There's some quality teams in here. Any way you sort of look at it, and I think it's a good opportunity for Matt Eberflus to really show why the Bears should believe in him as the head coach. And part of that, I think, is going to be how they perform in Washington in Week 5. Thursday night game, 7:15 on the road. Frank, I'm not going to lie to you. This feels like a game they're going to lose. Is it winnable? Yeah, obviously. Sam Howell is, dude. People are talking about Sam Howell the way they just talked about Sam Ehlinger, like just the past season. Like I just maybe Sam Howell is better than I'm giving him credit for, but people are talking about him like it's a sure thing.
4th round pick, 5th round. I mean,
fifth round,
something like that. I mean, we know the track record for non-first round quarterbacks. I mean, there's a few exceptions, but
yeah, Yeah, given that matchup, I think, depending on how Sam Howell is playing, but even then, like, I don't know, man. Thursday night on the road, I don't feel confident in that. I feel like that's one that the Bears might lose.
Potentially. I again, with the NFC being as weak as it is, and just knowing that football teams lose games that they shouldn't sometimes, you're looking at some of these games where it's like, on paper right now, I would favor the Bears, but who the fuck knows? It's the NFL. Washington certainly being one of them. But the thing is, that's going to be another test. I don't think the Commanders are going to have a bad defense. They're going to be a top 5 NFC defense. There's going to be a time to see, can you sustain drives? Can you establish the run? Can Justin Fields, that his pocket presence and awareness get higher? Is his quick game good? Because this is a game where I don't anticipate him having much time to throw, even with an improved offensive line. This is a team that gets after the quarterback. I know they didn't get him a lot of sacks last year, but they got a lot of pressures on the quarterback last year. So, yeah, that's one where they don't necessarily scare me because nothing like jumps off the page. But if Sam Howell is at least average, they have weapons. I would swap wide receiver rooms with them. I think they have a better wide receiver room than us. Right, running backs are running backs. It is what they very similar running back rooms. But in
our previous episode,
I would take McLaurin and Dotson. I would take McLaurin and Dotson over what we have. Top 2 anyway.
Speaking of which, that guy did a offensive line ranking, and the Bears finished, what was it, like top 12, top 14?
Yeah, it was a little egregious. He's there's no way they're that. I mean, they can be. They have the potential to be. But on paper, right now, you have to put them somewhere in the 20s at least, right? I mean, there's no late teens at the best. The 12 was crazy.
Yeah, whatever it ended up being. But they were high. They were very high.
Yeah, I mean, Washington, though, getting back to them, winnable game. But again, it's because a lot of these NFC teams aren't scary. We're not playing the Eagles. I would even we're not playing the Cowboys this year. I would favor that would be, to me, like a losable game. Like, we're not playing the gauntlet of the NFC. There's only like 4, maybe 3 good teams. So that does feel winnable. But again, it's like, what are the Bears going to be at that point? What is their identity at that point? What is Washington's defense going to be? What is Howell at that point? But on paper right now, I do think the Bears have the better overall offense because I think Justin Fields makes up for any, if you think they have a better wide receiver room, a running back room, I think Fields makes up for that because he's a better quarterback than Sam Howell. But
on the flip side, the Washington Commanders have the much better defensive line than the Bears have at this point. Now, granted, maybe Gervon got it right. Gervon Dexter and Zach Pickens end up being just this incredible dynamic duo on the inside, and you're able to get as much as you can out of Trevis Gibson, as they like to say it on the TV. And maybe Dominic Robinson takes a next step. Maybe they sign Yannick Ngakoue, right? Everybody seems to kind of be wanting that to happen, myself included. But I mean, the Commanders have a very, very good defensive line, and one that they've paid, put some assets into. So I agree with you. I think this will be probably the best test for the offensive line throughout up to this point in the season. I agree. Think that's probably their best test. Moving on, we got another divisional game, week 6, Sunday at noon. It's over. Kirk Cousins, non-primetime game, Sunday at noon. It doesn't even matter that it's at home in Chicago. Dude, Kirk Cousins is about to ball out for like 400 yards, 17 touchdowns.
He just might, yeah. I will say, full disclosure here, matter of fact, I want to say this sort of in question form. Am I shooting too low for the Bears this year, just to split with everyone in the division? Like, I would be happy if they go 3-3.
High. Feels a little high for me.
No, that's fine. But I'm saying, would you be happy with 3-3? That's how I should have.
Oh, listen, we've kind of talked about this, you and I together, throughout the last couple years. And I think my viewpoint has really changed in terms of how to look at the Bears, because as we've kind of developed this podcast and taken deeper looks into how this team really should be operating, I've walked away with less importance put on how they're going to do record-wise versus how the team actually looks.
Yep.
Granted, that as the team continues to get better, I expect to win games that they should win. I absolutely. If they go 3-3 in the division, my question would be, okay, how did they get there?
Right.
Because we talked about it a ton last year. Sure, the offense might score, the defense might hold, they may win 12-9, but what did the offense do? How did Justin Fields develop? Who on the defense is developing? Or is it just one of those random weird wins that sometimes happens in the NFL as well? I think 3-3 is reasonable. I think to be like excited about that. But again, you know, it's all about the context of how they did that.
Yeah, no, that's fair, and I agree. But I'm under the impression that the Bears will be taking a step forward this year. They're not going to only win 3 games again unless there's a lot of injuries. Like that would have to be Justin Fields being hurt pretty early. And I just ultimately think they're going to split with everybody. I don't know which ones they'll win, but they still feel winnable to me. But these teams know each other intimately. That's just what division rivals, that's what happens. So it's hard to expect unless you're the Eagles, unless you're an elite team, you know, to expect to sweep anyone within your division.
I'll tell you what, if you want to feel better about if you think this game is winnable or not, and they're going to split with the Vikings, week 12, it's a 7:15 game. That's a Monday night game. So if you want to feel like the Bears might win one, there you go.
There it is, yeah.
There you go.
But I think if the Bears get swept by anyone, it might be Minnesota.
It would most likely be Minnesota. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Week 7, they host the Raiders. That's a noon game, a nice little homecoming game for Jimmy Garoppolo. Man, it's hard not to see this game as winnable, just given where the Raiders probably will be at that point. It ultimately depends on how you believe, how much success you believe the 49ers should attribute to Jimmy Garoppolo versus Kyle Shanahan. Because, I mean, if we're talking Kyle Shanahan versus the clown that's running the Raiders, you know, obviously give me Kyle Shanahan. I might take Kyle Shanahan over 30 other coaches at this point, but I don't know. It's hard for me to be a believer in Jimmy Garoppolo at this point and kind of the direction of the Raiders. What do you think? How do you view this Raiders team?
They're truly bottom of the barrel, in my opinion. They're just a team without an identity. You know, we sort of took a deep dive. I don't even know if we were talking about it on the podcast, but like, say what you will about Josh McDaniel. I know there's a reason not to like him, and I get that. I'm not even coming from that angle, but I truly think every coach should have a chance to come in and sort of build their own program. He came in and was expected to win right away. Unless you're Sean Payton and you have that track record, that to me is stupid. I think you have to build your own identity, draft, sort of start from fresh. Doesn't mean like tear everything down like the Bears have done, but come pretty close to it. Like actually get a retooling, and he didn't have a chance to do that at all. It was, here's Devontae Adams, figured this shit out with a shitty defense and like nothing else, and an injured Darren Waller. Like that was it. With that said, the same way that you described this should be a win against Denver, I don't feel that strongly against Denver. I feel that way against Las Vegas, maybe even times 2. That this is a game that I will be highly disappointed that if the Bears lose that game.
Okay.
I mean, the same way that we're talking about measuring sticks towards Kansas City, this is a chance to separate yourself from the bottom of the barrel, in my opinion.
It's also a West Coast team playing a noon game at Central Time. So then,
you're big on the locations and times, and you're usually right. My brain just doesn't even think.
I know, but there is something to it. I believe in that.
I agree. I agree.
Then they go to a Sunday night game, which is an interesting matchup to me. I'm not quite sure how this matchup came to be or why it's a Sunday night game, to be completely honest. The Chicago Bears at the Los Angeles Chargers. That's just what's the angle there, Frankie? Like it's not even like if this was, and they're not playing, but if this was Chicago Bears at Jacksonville Jaguars, or probably Sunday night, so they'd probably flip it to be in Chicago, but that would make sense because you got the Justin Fields, you got the Trevor Lawrence angle.
Right.
What's the angle with this game? I'm not seeing it.
I don't think there is one, Jack, but can I just say, I haven't looked at all the primetime games yet. I've really only looked at the Bears schedule. I hope that means that we're getting away from narrative-based primetime matchups.
We've complained quite a bit.
It's something we've complained about a lot. So, but I know it happens so much that I know, like both of us, we've done it before. Like, what the hell even is the angle here? I hope that means that that's starting to die down a little bit, because I don't want there to be this weird forced narrative every single time that there's a primetime game.
See, now hold on, because I'm looking at the Week 8 schedule right now, and you got Texans at Carolina. Boom, right there. That's your Sunday night. That's your Sunday night game right there.
Yeah, but I would expect the Chargers Bears to be a better game.
It'll be a better game.
Yeah,
but I'm curious, like, Frank, how? Because listen, I feel like there has been nobody down more on the Chargers that I've talked to personally than you. I feel like, and it's not necessarily that you're like against them or anything like that. Like, you don't root against them necessarily, but you have never really been a big believer in the Chargers, in what they're working with there. Obviously the big change being now they have Kellen Moore as their offensive coordinator, who I know you've been high on. I've been high on in the past as well. What do you think about this Chargers team? Is this, in comparison to the Broncos and the Raiders, is this as winnable as those?
No, I think this is the second most unwinnable. Yeah, I couldn't find a better way to word that, behind Kansas City. My angle with them, what my level of frustration is, they're way too talented to lose the games that they do. So, I mean, this could be one of those games where the Bears just fucking pull it off because the Chargers charger. All my life, they don't finish games. All my life, they've had insane offensive talent, and they put up good regular season numbers, and they just can't figure out how to win in the playoffs, or sometimes even get to the playoffs with a team that's way too talented to miss the playoffs. That being said, I mean, it's week 8. Like, at that point, they should still be firing on all cylinders. The choke job has not started just yet. With the new OC that I think will, have that offense humming. Again, that's a test right there to see what this offense really is, because we don't have an elite defense. We may not ever have one again if they continue to pour assets on, and become a modern NFL team. So yeah, I mean, Justin, how far can you take us? DJ, Claypool, Darnell, like, are you all ready for these types of games where, Justin's dropping back 45 times, 50 times? So
I expect that crowd to be heavily favored by Bears fans,
Agreed.
Which I think will really, really help. And that should just be a fun game. Maybe that was the angle all along. Was they were just looking for two young, explosive quarterbacks who can just kind of sling it around and run around a little bit, and create some opportunities on offense to score points. Maybe that's just it. Can't wait for the transitions to deep dish pizzas and talking about the Bean and the Sears Tower and all that good stuff that those goofballs like Chris Collinsworth just love to do. Frankie, moving on from that game, that Sunday night game, then the following week you're going to New Orleans. Not you. Well, you might be. I don't know.
I could be. Yeah, you don't know my fucking life.
Noon game again on CBS. Just weird. Derek Carr and the Saints, Frank. I guess it really that's kind of all it boils down to when it comes to the Saints. They still got Dennis Allen as their head coach. I wasn't super impressed by their offseason. I don't know. I feel like this could be a pretty winnable game for the Bears.
It's winnable, but they quietly had a top 10 defense last year. Again, like, defenses are hard to be scared of, even if they are top 10, but they stopped the run very well. I don't know. That offense is so weird, man.
Yeah.
Like, Chris Olave is phenomenal. We don't know if Michael Thomas can stay healthy. If you guarantee me a healthy Michael Thomas,
give me the Saints.
Yeah, give me but they're an ugly. They're like the epitome of the NFC. If you want to know what the NFC as a whole is, just look at the Saints, because you can squint and they can win 12 games, or they might win fucking 4. Who knows? Like, and that's what the NFC is. Like, none of these teams seem to really have, not none. A lot of these teams don't really have an identity. They just seem ugly on paper. Definitely winnable, but going into New Orleans, you just talked about, you expect the Chargers game to be heavily Bears. Ain't shit heavily Bears in New Orleans, baby. That crowd is going to be there. That dome is going to be going nuts. And that's going to be, again, like, these are the things. I know it sounds stupid. There's the Homer Bears fans who are like 17-0, the Bears, the deep dish pizza. Yeah, shut the fuck up, right? Like, but these are the things that I'm looking for. This is a young team with an ascending quarterback. Can you go in and win this game? Can you go in and, I mean, even like, where you would take it a step forward, where I'd maybe start drinking some Kool-Aid here. Can you go into New Orleans in a hostile environment like that and dominate? Right? Like, that's what you're looking for. Again, winnable on paper, but that environment, This is the first game where I'm thinking like environment. Kansas City probably too, but they're just a superior team. They can play in our backyard.
I don't think if they were in Chicago,
yeah, right.
Would matter at all.
That's what I mean. Like this one roster, I think I like the Bears roster a little bit better. Quarterback a little bit, maybe even a wash because Derek Carr's a different type of quarterback. He's a good quarterback, but that's a hostile. It's the first environment that you're going into that is going to be tough. It's going to be very, very tough. So. You're going to be looking at things like, is Luke Getsy going to be prepared for silent snaps? Is he going to be drawing that up the week before? Is the offensive line really gelled at that point to know when there are silent snaps and pre-snap motions and just everything? Like, they could lose this game just based off of crowd noise, and getting themselves in 3rd and longs because they're making simple mistakes that, they shouldn't be. So that's going to be an interesting one, man. That's one that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, and that's a really good point because this team does, one of the best things they did last year was how they just did not get penalized very often, right? They were a very sound football team. Granted, then all the injuries started happening and they kind of lost their way a little bit. But that is, you brought up a really good point, and I think it kind of more attributes to potentially the next game a little bit more, even that Week 10 Thursday night game against the Panthers, which I got to be honest, Frank. Before we talk about the game itself, I do not like, first of all, I don't like Thursday night games at all anyways, but multiple Thursday night games? Like, what the fuck are we doing here?
Yeah.
What are we doing here? What are we doing?
Well, I forgot what I was listening to. There's a team that has 4 Thursday night games, I think, this year.
Oh, well, while we're talking, I'm gonna be looking that up.
I'm going crazy. I was like halfway listening to it. I don't know if it was a YouTube video or what.
But anyways,
yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, like, that's a game that the Bears should dominate because that's in my opinion, an inferior football team. The Panthers are not as good as the Chicago Bears, I don't think. Granted, we'll see kind of how that offense works with Bryce Young if he's playing at that point, or if it's Andy Dalton still holding on for that job for dear life, which is just legitimately hilarious. But ultimately, the Bears, like Matt Eberflus, had a chance to dominate games last year, and he just didn't do it. They won relatively big a couple times, I believe, but like I want to see that killer instinct from him, and it was something I was complaining about last year. I know I was definitely more of a complaint. Not even going to say it was a legitimate, cry, but like, give me something, give me a little something. Go and kick a team's ass. Like that's what I want to see. I feel like that's kind of the next step that this team sort of has to take.
But you know what, the angle that you had last year because of the situation was the Bears have nothing to lose. Why are you punting on 4th and 1? That you can scale that to a game from a defensive head coach that's being more conservative, saying like, let's just keep it close and the defense will win us the game, or we can just make timely plays on offense. If Carolina is an inferior team the way that you're describing them, that can't be a close, I don't want to say can't be a close game, but at the very least pull away in the 4th quarter. If you have a lead going into the 4th, you're not going to sit there and bleed clock. You're going to put your foot on their neck and off them. Like you can't let them stick around. That said, I do think I'm a little bit higher on Carolina. I don't look at them as like bottom of the barrel the way I do Las Vegas. I still think that it's a winnable game, and I think the Bears should win that game, but I like what they've got going on defense. I really do. I still think they ultimately fucked up not taking Justin Fields a few years ago. But that was the start of them building that secondary. And I think their defensive line isn't bad. It's better than the Bears is. I can see the Bears losing that game coming off 4 days rest, man. You're going into a hostile environment on the 5th and going right back in, going back home, granted, but that's a quick turnaround for a team that I don't think is as bad. Like, if they're as bad as you're saying, so be it. But I think they're going to be solid. I think Carolina's a 6-7 win team.
I don't think it's the Lions that you were referring to. They do play 3 Thursdays this year because of Thanksgiving. So I'm wondering if
it may have been that. I knew there was a team that was playing way too many Thursday night games.
Yeah. Well, it won't be Thursday night. I know that. Luckily, the Bears aren't on Thanksgiving this year, so don't have to deal with that. But speaking of the Lions, Frankie, they play them Week 11, noon game in Detroit. Listen, I said this last year And I was a little, I will fully admit I was wrong about Dan Campbell. He's definitely proved to be a better head coach than I gave him credit for. However, I do still think people overrate him it just in total. And I really feel like the Lions are continuously overrated just in general. Like, I do think the Bears will probably more than likely lose this game just being in Detroit. And the Lions will be better than the Bears. I do believe that as well. But just like, it's not, I just don't know where this confidence in the Detroit Lions comes from. I really don't understand it. I don't think I ever will. But that's, your star wide receiver. Oh, I guess he's not the star, but your young and upcoming wide receiver, the guy you drafted in the first round, gets suspended 6 games for betting in the facility, and when he could have just done it from home. So good call there.
That whole situation was really boneheaded. But
yeah,
Jackie, I think me and you feel. I mean, we have since last year. I'm higher on them as a team. I think I'm higher on that coaching staff. To be quite honest with you, Jack, I think Detroit's winning this division. I just think just the way that roster's built.
Okay.
I think they have the best roster in the division. To be quite honest. So for me, if the Bears split with Detroit, and if they're as good as I think they are, which isn't, they're not the Eagles. I don't look at them as like, this dominant team. Granted, if it all comes together, they could be. It's going to depend on Jared Goff, being a tad bit better than last year and other players developing. But I like the roster a lot, man. I really do. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is a legitimate wide receiver one. That's going to be just their passing attack in general is going to be a test for this secondary, because at this point, I'm assuming me and you are going to be complaining on a weekly basis about the pressure that the Bears can get on quarterbacks. So it's going to be up to the secondary to do some things, maybe even Alan Williams. A guy actually who we haven't spoken about with our already like pre-complaints about the defensive line. That is what, Jack, that's one thing where that's going to be a part of the season where you're talking about the in the hunt thing that Fox fucking loves. The Bears are going to be on that graphic. I would bet the house on that. I'm not saying they're going to be in first place. I'm just saying they're going to be on that graphic. And if we're right that this pass rush isn't there at that point, you're talking about a division game. You're talking about 3 straight division games. Detroit, Minnesota, Detroit. Alan Williams has a lot to prove this year. I understand he was working with fucking bags of bones at certain points last season. But he did abandon the blitz a lot in games.
Too much.
Too much on a week-to-week basis. Again, that wound up being a great thing. We got the first pick, we got the trade down. I get all that, but let's look at a vacuum here in a moment. You're talking about a team that wants to win games. Your defensive coordinator lets you down. This year, and it was sort of brushed under the rug, and maybe rightfully so. It was a losing team, for all the outcomes that happened. We're happy about it, but this year they're going to be actively looking to win and potentially make the playoffs in a weak NFC. And if they can't get a pass rush, we need Alan Williams to start drawing up better stunts, better blitzes, whether that's corners, safeties, linebackers. And I think the frustrating thing was last year when he did it, it worked. And he just sort of stopped. I mean, it's why the linebacker you traded in week 6 or whatever was like 3rd in sacks on your team, and your safety was number 1 because the blitzes worked.
Yeah.
So, it's going to be big in these division games, especially late. What is Alan Williams going to do here? Because I'm expecting, if say what you will about Jared Goff, he's a above average quarterback that if you give him time, he's going to fucking dice you up. We've seen 400-yard passing games from this dude. He's not a bad quarterback. People can make fun of him all they want. He is a good quarterback.
He might be a top 5 quarterback in the NFC.
I think he's the best as it stands right now. I think he's the best in the division, at least. I trust him. I trust him more than I trust Kirk. Justin has the most potential, and it's not close.
Jared Goff did go to a Super Bowl. Kirk Cousins has been to a Super Bowl.
I mean, it's again, people can make fun of him, but above average to good quarterbacks do things in the NFL. They can do very good things in the NFL. So, winnable on paper, sure, but fuck, man, if we split with the Lions, if they're as good as I think they are, I'm going to be very happy with that. Yeah, but it sounds like you feel a tad bit, a tad bit different.
They're just one of those teams, one of those franchises like the Browns, the Jaguars. Prove it.
Oh, I get it. I get it.
And I'm not saying that you don't say that. I'm just saying prove it. because these bad friends, there's always that one team that people fall in love with in the offseason. They do something really like I'll never forget. God, well, I guess I will forget because it's the Browns and I don't really give a shit about the Browns. But like there was that one offseason where they, with Baker and they were going in and everybody was like, here we fucking go. And they just fucking shit the bed and were like 6-10 or something like that. Like it's just like it's constant with these franchises. And great, I would say arguably out of those three teams I mentioned, the Jaguars actually have proven it more or less when they have a good roster.
That's fair.
And I expect them to be the class of the AFC South, and I don't really know how much of that is like the bar probably isn't super high, but the way that you talk about the Lions is how I feel about the Jacksonville Jaguars. I just I don't know. I think it's because the Lions always lose that people kind of get behind them a little bit. I feel like that's kind of what happened with the Cubs for a very long time. Like people would be like, oh, wouldn't that be fun if the Cubs won? And then they just continuously don't meet expectations. Just show me if you're going to be, the Lions made some changes in that running back room. They have David Montgomery now. They have Jahmyr Gibbs. Out go DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams. They have a very good pass rush. The Lions do. So, we'll see. I don't dislike the Lions. I just don't understand why people talk about them like they're one of the best teams in the league. And I know that's not how you talk about them. You just like them for what they are, which is very fair.
I think they're supremely talented. Fair. Yeah, I think they have a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. But I think the way that I talk about the Chargers of like, sure, you won your 10 games this year, prove it in the playoffs. Yeah. I think that's the same to a lesser degree because the Lions still have to make the playoffs and win the division. But
how about make the playoffs?
Yeah, no, right. But it's the same sentiment of like, sure, you can have all this talent and do all this, but you're still the same old franchise that you always been. I think that's a fair sentiment to have. But again, to me, it's like, I think we can sometimes be a victim of the algorithms. It's more of the Lions fans that pump this shit. That franchise hasn't. They're just going about their business. Dan Campbell is a little bit more of a rah-rah guy. I think I may like that a little bit more than you do. But
the crying is too much for me.
There's something about a muscular man that cries that just shows the duality of man. I love it.
I want to make this very clear.
You're pro crying.
Don't. Yeah, absolutely. If you need to cry, have a good cry. I just like it. It feels very and like maybe I'm wrong because I genuinely feel like he does feel those emotions, but like there's just something about very very theater-esque about it that makes me feel like.
Oh, you think it's a little phony?
Oh, a little bit.
Okay, I get it. I get it now. I don't think it is, so that's why I feel it feels more genuine to me. But I mean, if you have the feel of phony, it is what it is. I feel that way about certain players across every league. Like there's just this manufacturedness to it.
I agree, and maybe he's just good at the theater element. And again, I do think there is those emotions are there. I just think sometimes he maybe hams it up a little bit. But if you're wondering why we're spending so much time on the Lions, it's because, as Frank mentioned, the next two games it's the Lions at home, or excuse me, in Detroit. Then they play the Vikings on the road on that Monday night game. Again, talked about that. That's an easy W. Don't even question it. And then week 13 is their bye, another late bye for them.
Yep.
Not sure how I feel about that. And then Frank, we'll get into the bye week in a second, but then it's they host the Lions noon game at home. Frank, let's talk about the bye a little bit. Week 13 is the Bears bye.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that? Do you like that that they kind of get into a rhythm of those games? Do you kind of wish it was maybe more closer to the middle of the season? How do you feel about that?
I felt a way last year, Jack, but now it's just like I really don't know because I don't know how much of an effect it really had. The only negative that I can think of that I hope isn't even the case because I want Justin to stay in the pocket more, throw more, or not necessarily just stay in the pocket, but like just throw more than just use his legs like he was forced to last year. But you could think like if he is forced to run, if the offensive line is just as bad as it was last year and he's on track for another 1,000-yard rushing season, his legs may be gone by then versus like if there was a week 8, you know what I mean? You're sort of midway through the year and it feels a little better. Other than that, I don't know if there really is a competitive advantage to it. The only thing that I am looking for, and this is going to be, I have 2 points here because I don't think we have to talk individually about Minnesota and Detroit again. We already have. Will this regime be susceptible to really bad performances after a bye? That's a huge red flag for me. That was one of the first red flags in the Nagy regime of like, what the fuck did y'all do in the bye week? Because you came back and looked like you haven't played football a day in your life. It was bad. So that's one. Two, just this whole stretch of games, Jackie, they go 0-3 here. There's no playoffs. Point blank, period. It doesn't matter how many, even if that means they still make the playoffs, they will not have. To me, this is the stretch of the season. Those 3 games in particular, you got to show me the dog inside of you. This is 3 straight division games. I'm not saying go 3-0, but I'm saying you can't. If you go 2-1, I'm happy. I'm feeling good. You go 0-3, maybe even 1-2, and all the games are close. Cool. You lose all 3 of those, Jack. You're gonna lose me.
That brings up an excellent point, Frank. This is kind of a bogus thing by the NFL schedulers to have this kind of window. Granted, I will say they did help the Bears out by giving them that bye. I do think if you're going to have a bye that late, it better be in a 3 divisional game window. I don't really like that they're playing 3 straight divisional games.
It's a little weird, yeah.
Break it up a little bit more. Like I'm not a big fan of that. But yeah, that. Looking back on it, I don't think it should be understated how important that window into how Matt Nagy was as a head coach. Like, looking back on it, it was something that you and I had noticed and were ultimately became like a joke amongst Bears fans. It was like, oh, well, we just won 6 straight. We're coming off the bye, though. Here comes the losing streak. And that's pretty much what happened every single time. I think it was a really, really good indicator of how that team was being being prepared, being ready to go, and it's just a weak point for Matt Nagy and that entire regime. So yep. I agree. I think this will be a good challenge for the Bears. That this might be their toughest stretch in the schedule, just overall. You get some nice fillers in between certain games. 3 straight divisional games is tough. That's very tough.
Agreed.
So yeah, great point by you. Week 15, there's a TBD game for the Cleveland Browns. And I feel like I've seen that more this year than any other year before. There's been quite a few TBD dates. I'm assuming. I'm not quite sure why the Bears going to Cleveland might potentially be either whether it's going to be a Monday night game, a Sunday night game, maybe it's going to be a fucking Thursday night game.
No, Jackie, there's going to be some Friday games this year. Yeah, there's going to be the TBDs are for potential Fridays. I don't either.
I don't like Friday night at all. There's not even a channel listed, so I guess that makes sense.
Because
Friday night football. Come on, man!
I know it's gross.
Fantasy football is going to suck this year.
That's the only thing that I thought of is they keep adding fucking days. It's like, what are we? There's a questionable guy on Sunday, so you're forced to start someone on a Friday. Or you plug in the guy who's questionable for Sunday, he's out. You rush your guy that was supposed to be there on Friday. Like, ooh, commissioners everywhere are trembling. But
that Browns game, Frank, what do we think?
Jackie, this one I'm a little conflicted about, to be quite honest with you. There's a world in which Cleveland's really fucking good this year.
Agreed.
And at that point, we're gonna know if they're really good. Like, we're not catching an early Cleveland. We're catching a Cleveland that Deshaun Watson has his connection. He has his massage parlors. He's fucking lubed up and ready to go, baby. And there's a world in which they just beat the brakes off us. That if we're coming off 0-3 stretch in the division, a little down on themselves. I will say I like Cleveland's roster a lot. This year, the reason why I say there's a chance for them to be really good, Jack, is because this year truly does, as cliche as it sounds, quarterback's the most important position in football. If he is back to being himself, that's a dangerous fucking team. They're in the AFC, so they may ultimately win like 9 or 10 games and sneak into the playoffs because the competition's tough. But you're talking about they're playing an NFC team that week. They're not playing, the Chiefs. They're playing a probably more middling Bears team. And in a world where Deshaun Watson gets his shit together and he doesn't look like the worst quarterback in the league, for a 4-week stretch, they've got the offense. They certainly have the defense. The running game, they still have Chubb unless he's hurt at that point. But I mean, they just plug in fucking Dearness Johnson and he'll do the same thing, right? I mean, running backs are running backs. I don't know, dude. I really don't. Like, I'm more inclined to say the elite talent that Deshaun Watson is, minus the off the field. I feel like I always have to say that because someone's going to comment and say, hey, guy on the right, why didn't you tell him that fucking Deshaun Watson's a nasty man?
And also fix your fucking headphones.
And fix your fucking headphones. But I don't know, Jack. I don't know if this is or not. I'm more inclined to think that he figures it out, that he gets it back together, and that this is a really good team.
Yeah, I'm going into this year expecting Deshaun Watson to be back to playing like Deshaun Watson. Another offseason, a full offseason with Amari Cooper, with Donovan Peoples-Jones. Like they have they just got Elijah Moore too. I like this roster. It will all depend. Well, not all. I should say it will mostly depend on two things. Number one is Deshaun Watson. The other is going to be Kevin Stefanski. Is he the coach that everybody talked him up to be? Is he the guy that can lead this team to have an elite offense? Was it all Baker Mayfield or was it not? That's really going to be the two biggest question marks for this Cleveland team. It's in Cleveland, which is not an easy place to play. Those fans, goddamn, that is probably the closest thing you could compare to Cubs fans is probably Cleveland. Like a team that just, it doesn't matter win or lose, those fans are going to be out there.
I was thinking Raiders fans are in that ballpark too.
Cowboys fans. Well, except the Cowboys won 3 titles.
Yeah.
Cowboys fans are fucking losers.
Fuck them.
Yeah, that's right. I think that'll be a really, really good game. Unless it's on Friday night. I won't like that. Sunday evening, late afternoon, Christmas Eve, Frankie. Merry Christmas. Arizona Cardinals at home. It's going to be a cold fucking game, Frank.
Yeah, it is.
That being said, this should be an easy dub.
Yeah, the way
even if Kyler's back.
I'm going to be honest with you, Jack. I don't know how much we're going to talk about the Cardinals, so I'm just going to get this take off right now. I think the Cardinals are going to win 2-3 games. They're going to tank. I don't think Kyler's playing this year. I think he's getting traded next offseason, as a matter of fact. I think that's the play. I think the New England Patriots trade for Kyler. I don't know who's going to trade for. Who knows who's going to need a quarterback?
I'm just saying any franchise trading for Kyler Murray. I don't think it's going to be that one in Boston. They maybe don't.
Yeah, he didn't fit. He didn't fit what they like to do.
He doesn't.
But no, I think again, even let's just say the Bears have a bad stretch. Detroit, Minnesota, Detroit, Cleveland. Let's say they go 1-3 in that stretch. This still is a prove it game. Prove that you're not bottom of the barrel, because I think Arizona's a 2-3 win team. Fair. 4, maybe they're in the NFC. They might pull out a fucking win if they're not supposed to, and it can't be against the Bears.
What if they draft Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison 1-2? God, that'd be a dream. All right, let me ask you this. Let me ask you
That'd be nice.
Totally unfair question to ask, but I have to. I want to.
Mm-hmm.
What would you rather have? Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. or Justin Fields and DJ Moore? I mean, we have no idea what the other two will be.
No, I know, but I'm inclined to say Justin Fields and DJ Moore, not from any sort of homer standpoint. I again, the older that I get, the more that I, especially coming off the Mitch Trubisky experiment into this, I think you really can't undervalue the actual development of a quarterback. We still need to see more development from Justin, but we've seen actual progress from him.
Absolutely.
Like the same way that there's someone that, the fucking Jag With Us podcast is talking about Trevor Lawrence. Like, they've seen tangible progress. You know what I mean? Like,
dude, that's a great name for a podcast. It's a fucking maybe we'll make.
Maybe we record on Wednesdays. Podcast. We record our Jaguars podcast on Wednesdays.
We'll be a spin-off podcast called Jag With Us. I like that one. That's good.
But no, you get what I'm saying though. Like the real NFL reps, the real development. Like Caleb Williams seems to have all the talent in the world, but so do a lot of quarterbacks. Justin Fields has shown actual tangible progress as a thrower, as a runner, as an athlete. His processor, that processing speed, like we've seen it. So it's hard for me. I feel like it's more of a sure thing right now.
Yeah, I believe I've said this on the podcast before, but if there was, because I think we talked about it when we were talking about the quarterbacks of this draft class, And I would take Justin Fields over every single one of the quarterbacks that came out of this class right now.
Yeah.
I would not say the same for Caleb Williams. I've fallen in love with that kid. Like I think he's going to be very, very good. And Marvin Harrison Jr. Like as a big OG Marvin Harrison fan, back in my youth, it's very, very cool to see him. Like, because I mean, fuck, like you think about how many juniors there have been since in our days growing up. Ken Griffey, what was it? Ken Griffey's kid, right? He was in the NFL for a little bit. He sucked.
Was he really?
Thaddeus Moss. Yeah, he played for
I remember Thad Moss, yeah.
Thad Moss, he ended up being bad. So, like, just to see it, like, work out for once.
Well, Joey Porter should work out.
Joey Porter. Chase Claypool better have a better season than Joey Porter. I don't know how you compare the two, but let's just say
you can't, but we will.
Better work out.
I believe you, Michael.
We'll find a way. Yeah, that Cardinals game should be a good test to see if they're as terrible as they are. Speaking of being terrible, well, no, I guess I shouldn't say it like that.
Yeah, no.
New Year's Eve game, noon. That'll be a fun way to celebrate the new year.
Happy New Year. Yeah, Happy New Year.
At home against the Atlanta Falcons. Nice little revenge game against Ryan Pace. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah. I mean,
how do you feel about the Falcons?
That's what I was just gonna say, Jack. Like, it's hard to say. I'm not sold on Desmond Ridder. I didn't hate him as a prospect. I thought he was a solid prospect, but they have a lot of fucking offensive weapons, dude. And he may either just hold them back, or he may be in a system that allows him to like make easy throws and sort of get the ball, get the ball in the hands of playmakers. I don't fucking know. I legitimately don't. I mean, their defense isn't horrible. I'm checking the stats right now. Okay, maybe their defense was not horrible, but I thought they were more middle of the pack than what they were. Oh, yeah, they gave up a lot of passing yards. Never mind. Okay, that negates my point. But that offense could be really fucking good, dude. That offense, there's a chance. All Desmond Ridder with those weapons, all he has to be is average, potentially even below average. You can be up and down. Have a Carson Wentz type of year. But those ups may be really high with the weapons that they have. Kyle Pitts, I know we make fun of tight ends, but he's supremely talented. Drake London.
Kyle Pitts, if I'm being honest with you.
Bijan Robinson.
I like Bijan Robinson.
I like their second. Who was their wide receiver too? I'm blanking on it, but I like him as well.
Well, they have Matt Collins. They have Scotty Miller, right? They have Jared Bernhardt. The second receiver you might be thinking of is probably gone. But they do have a good.
Was I thinking of Zacchaeus? I know he's gone.
He's in the Eagles now.
Yeah.
They have a good offensive line, right? Caleb McGarry was a guy we talked about at right tackle that in free agency, the Bears might have been able to sign him. Didn't end up happening. But if you'll recall, I believe you and I both had Desmond Ridder as either our quarterback 2 or quarterback 3 in that previous draft class. I think I might have had him as my quarterback 2.
I had him at 3. I was tempted to move him to 2.
Man, I'm curious to see what happens with Malik Willis now, because that feels like a thing where teams have just the team that drafted him and knew that he was going to be a project have just completely given up on him. And granted, they spend a lot more time with him than you or I, Frank. So maybe they know something that we don't. But it's pretty shocking to see them sort of just give up on a guy that kind of was talked about the way that Anthony Richardson was talked about this past draft class. And granted, I think Anthony Richardson will probably end up being more likely to be a better player than Malik Willis. But I'm very curious to see what happens with that. But getting back to the Falcons, I like Desmond Ridder. I like him a lot more than other people do. I think he fits kind of that dual threat weapon, that dual threat quarterback weapon that you kind of need in today's NFL. If there's going to be a quarterback that kind of takes a Jalen Hurts type jump where it's like drafted outside of the first round, guy, has a certain skill set and we'll see if he can develop, it might be Desmond Ridder. Because I just think he's in the best position out of out of all of those rookies.
Yes.
The quarterbacks from last year, I should say, the second-year quarterbacks, to succeed. He's got the weapons. He's got the height. Drake London, I think, is just a really, really good. He's going to be a very good player. And you got probably one of the best running backs in the NFL already.
Yeah, probably so.
Behind him.
Yeah,
and not for nothing, Tyler Algier is pretty fucking good too. And also they still have
Cordero Patterson. Yeah, I mean, I think the only situation you can say is potentially better is Kenny Pickett's. I still like their weapons, and not for nothing, there's going to be a lot of people drafting Deontay Johnson in the 4th or 5th when you can just get the guy who's going to outproduce him in the 16th, and Allen Robinson. So a lot of weapons over in Pittsburgh. Jackie, are we ready to move on to the final game of the week? Game of the year?
Why you gotta throw? Why you gotta do that? But no, listen real quick about Kenny Pickett. I received a lot of backlash from a certain co-host when I announced that Kenny Pickett was my guy on the left. Gave me a lot of shit for having Kenny Pickett over Mr. Malik Willis.
It was still racially motivated, and I stand by that.
It was fucking not, all right? Listen, just because I said Justin is a running back at least 5 times, all right, doesn't mean that it's racially motivated, okay? Fucking get that right. Fuck you. The Packers Week 18 TBD. Fuck knows what that means. But, man, I hope this game only matters in the sense that they're either getting a better draft pick, or they've already made the playoffs and this game doesn't mean shit.
Yeah, no, those are the options, Jackie. The San Antonio Spurs have got the number 1 pick. Wembenya, welcome on down to Greg Popovich Island. What did the Bulls get?
All right. Well, that was probably the lottery thing just started, so they're probably so it's the Spurs, Hornets, Trailblazers, and Rockets. That means the Bulls have officially lost their 1st-round pick.
Oh.
That pick will be going to the Orlando Magic. So.
Oh, nice. Thanks, Vucevic, you fucking piece of shit, stupid-ass European bitch. Go eat some beans, you cunt.
It's pretty incredible that the NBA just completely rigged that draft for the San Antonio Spurs. You knew it was going to fucking happen, so.
Yeah, anyway, no, you're right. If either team is in the playoff hunt, winning in, that's going to be a primetime game. Bears-Packers Week 18, it doesn't get better than that. I will say, regardless of whether or not the Bears are in the playoff hunt, if they're winning, they're in, or what, this is a time where I'm really looking at the Bears to beat the Packers. Again, Week 1 is fucking Week 1. I hate that we have to do it, but I still want to beat them. This is when, if both teams are relatively healthy, especially both quarterbacks, this is when you talk about killer instinct. You talk about this regime buying into being the Chicago Bears. Say what you will about Lovey. People had their complaints towards the end. That motherfucker wanted to beat the Packers. He knew to gain the trust of Bears fans, you go and you beat the Packers. And that can potentially be, a cherry on top of a good playoff season, right? If they make it, or, maybe you're the Lions of last year. You have these ups and downs, but you go off on a high note and potentially even knock the Packers out of the playoffs if they're, the one that need the win and get in. So I think regardless, that game means something. Maybe more to the fans than anything else. Certainly not I think the players think less and less about that, but front offices are right in that with fans. Ownership is right in there with fans. It does mean something to them. Players are just another game. They didn't grow up Bears fans, all of them necessarily, and the Packers didn't grow up Packers fans, but, that is building a culture there. It's building a culture of beating your division rivals, your longtime hated rivals. And that, to me, regardless of what happens, again, unless you knock on wood, but Fields gets hurt early and it's just a lost season, then I don't give a fuck. But thinking that they may win anywhere from 7 to 10 games, that's going to be important regardless if the playoffs are on the line for the Bears or not.
I want to sweep the Packers.
I want to sweep them every year. Yeah.
Start getting that record, swung back in the Bears' favor, please, because I'm tired of hearing Packers fans talk. The worst outcome is that the fucking Bears, lose both games this year because it's a Week 1 weirdness, and then they're not even trying for Week 18, and they lose both games to the Packers. That just would be frustrating. But ultimately, Frank, I think this is a very doable schedule, just overall. There are not a lot of issues I have with the schedule outside of that little 3 divisional game window. Yep. I think that's a very tough thing to ask the Bears to do. Granted, I think they helped them out a little bit with the bye week. But there's really no parts of the schedule that I'm like, I don't really know how that's going to go. But I guess I also don't feel like that, only because my expectations for the Bears this season aren't super high either. This might be the second lowest expectations I've had for them, outside of maybe either last year or potentially even the Andy Dalton season.
Wait,
Like,
but
my expectations were pretty low.
did you have high expectations that second Trestman year? That to me was probably second.
I don't
lowest.
Count. Going into.
Yeah.
Wait, really? Going into that second year?
100%. All the fights and shit that were happening in OTAs and like the reports of him losing the locker room, I was out on that team.
After the season ended, I was like, all right, well,
no, going into year 2 of Trestman and the defense being historically bad and then not getting rid of Mel Tucker, I was so out on that whole regime. I fucking hated that whole coaching staff.
And the draft class is being pretty.
The draft class is being fucking dog shit as well. Yeah. So this, I mean, but you know what though? I don't have super high expectations, like, Super Bowl type of thing, but I have like tame expectations.
Be better.
But in a good way though, not like, here come better. Like, yeah, no, I think they're gonna take a step forward, whether that means like I'm right there with you, like you said earlier in the episode. Win total still doesn't matter for me this year. Continue to show progress as a full team, but more importantly, Justin needs to keep taking steps forward. If that happens, I will be satisfied, whether it's a 6-win season or a 10 or 11 win season.
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult because you're right. The NFC is not very good. The teams they're playing don't appear to be very good right now. I think there are a couple of obviously top tier. Man, I don't even know if I'd say that. I think they maybe play one top tier team. Like if you were to split these teams in the NFL in total into tiers, I would say they probably play only one of the elite teams in the NFL this season.
Yeah, that's also,
and that could be very good for their record.
Yeah, it's also hard to say though, because if the Chargers were in the NFC, they would be probably the second best team behind Philly, right?
That's fair, and again, I'm talking right now on in the middle of May, so who knows what teams will develop into. I mean, the Broncos could be one of those teams that's just going to be the turnaround that we always see. One team that just comes out of nowhere and just plays incredibly well. That could be the Broncos, with Sean Payton. It will really depend on what that looks like. Maybe the Lions take off the way that Frank is expecting them to. Maybe Jimmy Garoppolo is a lot better than I think he will be with the Raiders. Like, there's still so many questions, and teams change so much from year to year. It's really difficult to just sort of project, especially based off of how the team looked last year. But overall, I mean, I don't really think, I personally would not put the Chargers in the elite category. And for the same reason you talked about Sean Payton, and we've talked about Kevin Stefanski, and we talked about Matt Eberflus. Brandon Staley, he doesn't do anything for me. Like, he just, I don't know. I don't see it. Maybe that's why they brought in Kellen Moore. Maybe he's going to be his replacement, middle of the season if things aren't going very well. We'll have to see. But overall, I think this is a very doable schedule for the Bears to compete with. At the very least, these should be some entertaining games in there. Outside of that one Thursday night game in Washington, I expect that to just be a complete shit show, Frank.
No, come on, cut it out. The Bears have to make up for last year. Darnell Mooney better have fucking 200 yards.
They wear those fucking orange jerseys for, chalk it up as an L. Hate those fucking jerseys. I never want to see them again. Get them out of here.
I don't necessarily disagree with you, but my wife hates that take, and no one fucking makes my wife feel that way, Jack. You understand me? You piece of shit. She loves those orange jerseys. She loves them.
I'll tell you what. She clearly has good taste because she's the one who came up with the name of this podcast, but she's fucking dead wrong on the orange
Producer,
jerseys.
Can we cut that out? Can we get that last portion cut out, please? Thank you.
You know what I want? Here. I'll give you an alternative. Instead of the orange gross shit with the orange disgusting ass fucking helmet.
Here you fucking go.
Give me the blue helmets with the white C. Just the blue with like the off-white. I like that. Those are old school. Those are retro. Give me that. Enough with the orange. Orange does not look good. Give me one good team out of any sport in the history of the world that's been good wearing orange. You can't.
Tennessee, Candace Parker winning championships. No, their burnt orange is nice though. You got to give them that.
I don't give a shit about what are we even fucking talking about here?
Wait, you just
College?
said name a fucking team. Oh, you meant a pro sports team? Oh, there are none. I thought you said name any team. That's what you just told me to do, and I named a fucking team, and all of a sudden they're not good enough. I just didn't realize you didn't respect black queens that way, Jack. I didn't realize that you didn't support black women. My fault. My bad. We can end now.
Producer, cut that one off. Can we get that? Don't fucking. No, orange is disgusting. It's a gross ass color. Fuck the creamsicle jerseys that Tampa Bay is bringing back. I don't understand why people like them. It's the same shit with the neon green Seahawks jerseys.
Oh, God. Those pound for pound might be the ugliest. Those are fucking gross.
I correct me if I'm wrong. Was there a game in like 2005 where the Bears played the Seahawks and they both wore, it was like the neon green and the orange jerseys in one game? Am I making that up?
I don't know. I don't remember. I hope not.
I feel like there was. But like even those orange jerseys were better than what? Because
no, they were, because we've talked about it. Those were the burnt orange, and now they're like this weird like cherry orange. I don't know.
It's not with the orange helmets.
Can we bring back? Can we bring back the white on white with the blue helmets? Those are so sexy.
I would like that. Yeah.
Or even white on blue, like the dark navy blue. Give me. I like the white jerseys. I really do.
Let's be.
They're just hard working jerseys. First jerseys in the wash. Last jerseys out.
Yeah. See,
a jersey you can wear to my daughter's wedding. You know what I mean?
Give me the Reebok jerseys.
High
fucking day.
High IQ jerseys, Jack.
Ones who will sit down.
We should make skits. We need to make skits.
Yeah. Ones who watch the film. All right, those jerseys put in the work. They're first in, last out. Those jerseys.
First in the load, last out of the load.
Yep.
They get washed twice.
Frank knows something about loads. God damn it. Anyways, we may have to have a jersey. we may have to have a jersey ranking of all the
that
teams.
Would be fun.
Yeah,
or even
done that.
Maybe not a ranking, Jack. Maybe like our favorite uniform from every team.
No, fuck that. We're gonna put teams like their teams on the bottom.
But you can pick an ugly jersey from almost any team. So I feel like we have to pick our favorite jersey and then rank them. Because you're gonna pick the fucking Bears orange jersey versus like a beautiful jersey from someone else, like the fucking black and gold Steelers? You can't do that.
Well, no, I'm gonna put the Packers on the bottom because they're by far.
They're all whites. All whites are nice too, though. Browns don't have a good jersey. They're all ugly.
No, they don't. They're all ugly.
So maybe that's how we can rank them though, all together.
That's what I was thinking.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like one jersey.
No. I mean, we could. That would take about
that wouldn't be fun
in a row.
Yeah, the Browns have pound for pound the worst. The Steelers, their throwbacks are probably. They're gross,
and that could be part of the ranking. I think we should have that conversation. I think that'd be a very fun episode, and a lot of fans will get angry with us because there are some fans out there that like certain jerseys. There's some fans that I believe aren't as good. Brown and orange. Dude, I'm telling you, orange is just a bad color.
Wait, who's brown and orange?
The Browns.
They have fucking orange? Their helmets are orange.
They got the lettering as orange too.
Oh yeah, you're right. Hey, you know who has some underrated jerseys? I like Buffalo's jerseys.
Let's say that.
Indy, but blue is my favorite color though, so I feel like it's gonna be skewed heavy. Like even Tennessee, those light blue Tennessees. Ooh.
When the Bills switched over from the Ryan Fitzpatrick era, or going into like when Ryan Fitzpatrick was really good, like who's their quarterback, like Trent Edwards or something like that.
Yeah.
And they had the blue on blue with the red helmets when T.O. was on the fucking Buffalo Bills. Remember that? They had those ugly. I never liked the Bills jerseys, and then as soon as they switched to the white with the blue and the red, boom, they have some of the best jerseys in the league.
See, but I even like
to do a ranking.
I like Detroit's
really fun.
I like Detroit's light blue, Carolina's light blue. I think the pound for pound for me, Chargers. I had the fucking LT powder blue Ooh, I love
they
it.
have fucked it up though with the different combinations with like the yellow pants sometimes, and then like the
yellow
light
pants
blue
are gross. It knocks it down a little bit. Just the jersey, I like blue. I especially like baby blue.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think this would be a very fun episode to do.
But even Detroit's blue. Detroit's blue reminds me of Cubby blue. It's a shade lighter, but I like it.
Lulu blue. That's kind of Lulu blue.
I see.
Yeah. So this could be a very fun episode. I think we're gonna have to do this. I think we're gonna have to rank
let's get
jerseys.
Let's get it on our calendar. We should have a calendar.
Don't make a commitment because we're terrible with sticking to our calendar.
Yeah, we are.
But at some point, we will talk about the NFC quarterbacks, the AFC quarterbacks. We will do our jersey rankings. But in the meantime, we really appreciate you guys listening to this edition of the Bear With Us podcast. I'm Jack, a.k.a. Guy on the right. That's Frank, a.k.a. Guy on the left. I didn't use earbuds again. I'm sorry if it breaks your brain that the virtual background behind. I'm not in Hallis Hall. All right, I'm not outside right now. This is still the room with all the shit in it, because I haven't had a chance to get, put everything away yet. So
fucking excuses, Jackie. But
absolutely. That's
great
what this
episode.
podcast is all about, baby. Thank you guys for listening. Frankie, I'll talk to you next week, man.
Later, Jackie. Later, everybody.